Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. This week, I have Chris Miroff on the show. He's CEO, founder, serial entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and a USA Today and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. He's talking about his new book, The Empathy Revolution, in this podcast, and he talks deeply about how to get your team to be more unified, to become more effective, more profitable, more amazing, and how as a leader you can do that, how they can get them to understand why that their roles are so important, and how to feel more fulfilled in what they do each and every day. So if that's something, if you manage teams and you want to see better results within that team and see each one of those person's lives increased and improved, this is the episode for you. So listen on. Hello, and welcome to Outer Spaces, a podcast dedicated to empowering designers and contractors in the outdoor living space. Through this show, I hope to create a powerful resource for you, someone who is trying to grow their company but might not have all the tools and processes to do so. On Outer Spaces, we're passionate about breaking the chains of small mindsets and helping contractors just like you take control of their businesses and their lives. My name is Joshua Gillow, and through my 25 years of dirt under the nails experience, I look forward to sharing tips, strategies, and other contractor success stories here on the Outer Spaces podcast. Now, let's get on with the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Outer Spaces podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow, and my guest today is the CEO and founder, serial entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and USA Today and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. His upcoming book, Lead, Discovering the Heart of Authentic Leadership, which comes out here in October. In that book, he shares his philosophy and a practical guide on why the current model of leadership isn't working. He addresses that in order to retain employees, talent, engagement, the employees must grasp the vision and align with the values laid out from top down. When they understand why, when the employees understand why, they feel more fulfilled and more bought into the entire journey for the company. And the goal here today, when we welcome Chris Miroff onto the show, is to get deeper into exactly, if you're a business owner out there and you're not seeing your employees and your team members as absolute wells of awesomeness and getting deeper into how to unlock that awesomeness in them, you need to listen to this show because Chris is going to crank in today. He's written books about this. I really want to go deep into this subject. So Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
Absolutely, man. So I want to start off here with a quote I saw on Instagram when I was doing a little research for you, and I loved it. So I want to have the listeners listening, kind of give you a framework of what we're going to talk about. So Chris says, embrace the idea and dare to move towards unleashing your people's greatness. Together, they have the power to make your company thrive far beyond what you could ever do alone. Think about that, listeners. So often we get started in business and we want to be like, all right, well, I can do it all alone, this stoic pioneer, and I can do it all myself, and then I'll get all the credit. And deep down, that's what we want, right? That's not what we're going to tell people, right? I'm going to get all the credit. Everything's going to be amazing. And everyone can pat me on the back and say, you're just an absolute savage. This is amazing. But you get to a certain point in business where, I don't know, for me, it was about the $1 million mark where I was like, you know what? I can't do it alone. And I had to face that ugly truth, which turned out to be one of the most amazing things I ever had to face. So I'm going to stop talking and have Chris talk now. So Chris, tell us a little bit of how you got into helping people with this, especially this line of thinking, and how that became reality to you.
Yes. Well, like most stories, I think it comes from a place of pain. When you work really hard, when you pour yourself in, as most entrepreneurs or founders can attest, you pour your heart and soul into something. And then whether you realize it personally or professionally, you might hit a wall at some point. And really, that's where my story starts, is found some great success in business. First 4 years of my business, we grew from 3 people to 75 people. Moved to number 1 in the marketplace.
Nice.
And in that process, I walked into it with a lot of chips on my shoulder, some conscious, some subconscious. I had a bunch of metrics that I really wanted to kind of judge myself on. And from a business standpoint, hit every single one. Felt really good, proving my worth, my value as a businessman, business owner, but left me really emotionally depleted. And I know it's one of those things that if somebody told me this story as I'm just launching out of my journey, I'd be like, whatever, at the end of the day, like I'd rather be in your shoes. Well, I'm telling you that there's just something missing when you have to make a trade for business success. And so I had a bunch of people that really warned me, counseled me, but until I felt it myself and really had to make a decision on who I was going to be, it's just something you have to, I think, live through and feel. And so that feeling for me was my best friend who helped me start the business resigned suddenly. And this is on the heels of great business success and what I thought was a very great organizational culture. And yet I got a 2-week notice from really, in a way, one of the founders with me, those first 3 employees. And I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? Like, why wouldn't you bring me along on the journey? Like, I already knew that he was going to go back into the vocation that he had before at some point. I pulled him out of ministry and I knew at some point he'd want to get back there. He just had a heart and passion for people in ministry. And so I knew that was going to happen, but man, to be left out of the process, which was a 9-month process for him, felt like a stab in the back. And so that was kind of a low point for me to feel like I'm alone. And then that aloneness was confirmed. So I was meeting with a guy weekly as kind of a mentor. And I was trying to do some emotional work on myself, even though I was kind of unaware of it. But we would meet and talk about things like empathy. And I grew up in a home where empathy just wasn't modeled for me. Instead, like up in New England, it's kind of like, hey, suck it up, dry it up, pick yourself up, move on, past emotion, and really just focus on what you're going to do next. And so growing up in that environment, I just really wasn't familiar with this concept of empathy. You can ask my wife how terrible I was whenever she would bring anything emotional to me. With the best intentions, I'd just be like, well, here's how you don't have to feel that way. Really, in a way, belittling those emotions. And so I was already on a personal journey of trying to figure out what would that look like, both at home and at work, when, again, my best friend left the company. And I remember meeting with this guy and he said, hey, is there someone on the planet you would share your deepest hopes or deepest fears or deepest hurts with? And of course I lied and I'm like, absolutely. I've got my wife, I've got my friends, I've got a bunch of people that I can lean into. But I knew that wasn't true. And so on the way home that day, I really kind of, and what I do with emotion is I move it to my safe space. My safe space is just to be angry. And so I'm in my, I call it my fear shelter. But I'm in my fear shelter and I'm just raging angry on the drive home. Starts with traffic and the drivers, and then it goes to Jason, my best friend. Then it goes to this guy who's asking me these questions, to my family, and ultimately lands on me. I struggle with aspects of guilt. And when I feel guilty, what do? I just turn it into anger. So long story short, as a 42-year-old man who had accomplished business-wise anything and everything that I could have imagined, I cried for the first time as an adult on that car ride home, and just realized that I was emotionally alone and very isolated, that I had created a prison of my own making. And that prison kept everyone at arm's length. And by doing that, I also realized something else, that I couldn't grow that business anymore because I had created a glass ceiling, because I was incredibly necessary in absolutely every aspect of that business. So that was my low aha moment. And it took me about 12 to 18 months to figure out what kind of a man I was going to be for the rest of my life, to my employees, to my wife, to my kids. And that's been my journey for the last 7 years, is to figure that out.
I love that, Chris. Wow. So many things resonate with me when it comes to my journey as well, right? So often we start businesses like this and they become our entire focus. We forget about family, we forget about health, we forget about everything. All it is about winning, right? Because the last thing we want to do at the end is be like, we spent all this time, we robbed all this time from our families and we have nothing to show for it. Or we have all this money, but nobody wants to be around us. We feel like islands. And as men, it's a very common thing. So I'd love to unpack with you those years you've been working on getting out of that mindset, that old mindset, into where you are now, and then direct us into your book, and what is at the heart of leadership. Like, what is the core of that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Yeah,
it was, for me, this journey out was not, I think, I was already wrestling with empathy. I think it was more really wrestling with vulnerability. And again, growing up, this concept of leadership is not just at work, but at home. was this idea that I needed to be strong and confident in order for people to want to follow me. And I think there's a place for that, but this idea of like, never let them see you sweat, and you always make sure that you're the, first to work and the last to go home, and that you're willing to do anything and everything. But at the end of the day, I wasn't willing to do everything. I wasn't willing to be vulnerable in any way. And so, yeah, man, it's been 7 years, and it is still a daily struggle to figure out what vulnerability looks like. But once I kind of made up my mind, like everything else in life, I am a pretty determined guy. And so it really was baby steps to figure out, like, how do I expose something that I don't want to expose to somebody who might be able to reject me in that moment. And it was baby steps. It was like, thinking back on it now, like those first few were so like minor. If I thought about that today, I don't think of them as like big tasks that I had to do. I think of them as so minor. Like, what was I so afraid of? Yeah. But at the time, they were like, summiting Everest to me. It was mountains. Like impossible. Yeah. I've got a lot of unhealthy thinking as it relates to like my value as a person, and my value, I had it based in what I did for people and how I took care of them. And if I stopped doing that, if I somehow needed them to take care of me, I thought they'd all run screaming and think, this guy, man, what a mess. I can't follow this guy anywhere. And over the next 12 to 18 months, slowly but surely, I realized that in my weakness, I am strong, and bringing other people in to fill in the gaps of who I am and what I can do has been life-altering, life-saving for me. And again, that glass ceiling of the business, because that's really where I started with it, is at work, trying to kind of figure out, like, how do I show up in a way that allows other people in? When they started taking those steps with me, it really showed me this path that I needed to start to take, which was to try every day to become absolutely unnecessary. And I love that. Man, that's a tough one when you're when you're the founder, you're the guy, the engine behind everything, and you're like, well, what's going to happen to this thing if I remove the engine? Well, come to find out, I'm not the engine. I'm only a small cog in a much larger company and much larger gear. So that's kind of the journey that I'm still on, is like, how do I continually work to become unnecessary every single day?
I love that, dude. I often say, how do you fire yourself fast, right? As the owner, fire yourself. And it's something that seems so crazy and so alien to most business owners, because they own their jobs. Yeah. I did for most of my life. That's right. I owned my job. And as I said, if I can't go on vacation, my wife, she's from Germany, and they do little different things when it comes to vacations, right? She's like, I remember the first time she's like, we're going to go away for 2 weeks. And I'm like, I'm like, 2 weeks? Like that? The whole place is going to burn down. I'm going to come back to rubble. You know, the crazy part, came back, it was fine. And I'm like, wait a minute here. Well, was that a kick in the ego though, Chris? I'll tell you that much, because I wanted to be needed. I wanted to be the most important. Yeah. And then I'd sit there and say, wait a minute. So if that's possible, could I go 3 weeks? And a year later, it was 3 weeks. And I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, and it came back and things were stable. And I'm like, okay, cool. This is possible. So is it possible for me not to have to be there every day? Is that possible? And again, identity, you got into that earlier. Like, who am I if I'm not the one running the show all the time? So now you have to re-identify yourself, and you have to be like, well, for me, I was, a designer, I was a project manager, I was a business owner. And now all of a sudden I'm none of those, or I'm a business owner, but I'm not the project manager, not the designer. And I'm like, so who am I? Right? Yeah. And that's the hard part, especially as men, to wrestle with that identity and who are you next? And if you don't have this as your, you go to a cocktail party and they say, Chris, what do you do? And you're like, I do X, Y, and Z. That's an identity. For me, I'm a designer. Yep. I would buy designer clothes. I bought an Audi, so I look like a designer. Like, I lived the ethos of it. It's ridiculous, but I did it anyway, right? And then all of a sudden I wasn't. Now I'm like, what do I do? Do I get a bicycle? Like, what do I do?
That identity is so critical. And I've seen it even in my parents. They're in their mid 70s, and they were parents in their identity. They were in the corporate structure as part of their identity. They were grandparents here for the longest time as their identity. Well, now the grandkids are all older, so they're struggling with identity, and really that identity helps frame a value. Yes. And so
how you show up.
That's how I'm that's how I'm kind of able to overcome some of the ego that does show up each and every day. Is like, well, what do I want my identity to be? And so we really talk about this idea of significance is greater than success, and how we show up as significant for somebody is my identity, and that just changes now every interaction with employees, family, with friends, because now I can show up as significant. It doesn't matter what my job title is. You're absolutely right. We often kind of break down our identity in what we do. But what if we broke it down to who we are, like how we show up for people in every day? And that significance for me is based on the ability to display and utilize what I call soft skills or human skills, kindness and compassion and loyalty and patience and faithfulness and all those things that are incredibly binding when it comes to human relationships. And I can be significant even in the face of maybe this idea of a lack of success, business-wise, or even as a husband or a dad, but I can still be significant in those moments. And so that's really kind of the step process that was, for me anyway, is to figure out my way back was to figure out how to be significant for the people in my life.
I love that. And I love how you make that clear distinction. It's not about you being better than or more significant than somebody else. It's not a self-fulfilling significance. This is, how do I become more significant for someone else? Huge gap there. As you think about the 6 human needs, the third one is significance. We all need it as humans, but is it you to be significant to somebody in a way that I'm better than? Or is it a way that, or I'm trying to beat you, a competitor, that kind of thing? Or is it the fact that you're like, I'm here, Chris, and you're trying to be more significant for me? It's a big shift. It's a gigantic shift. You mentioned the word vulnerability. My wife and I have had deep conversation about this. With English being her second language, she understands words a little differently than I do with only having one language. So she talks about vulnerability, and we broke that word down after a while. And she's like, you say you're vulnerable all the time, and that's like a superpower of yours. And I was like, yeah, I would say that. She goes, but with a vulnerability, if you have, say, a suit of armor on and you have a vulnerability, that means you have a weak point. So someone could exploit that weak point. They could weaponize, in this case, they could weaponize something they know about you that you've shared, and that could be what makes you vulnerable. But if you're telling the truth or you're being honest, are you vulnerable?
Yeah, that is not, for me, vulnerable. So vulnerable is exposing something that somebody can
weaponize,
betray me with.
Yeah, weaponize.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because betrayal is one of my, it is my greatest fear relationally, is betrayal. And so you can see why vulnerability is like, it's the worst possible scenarios to expose. And so I can tell you something that might be vulnerable, but that same information to another person wouldn't.
Yep.
And so it's like I guard things in, how you have like a castle, and then you have like the inner castle, and you might even have a keep. Well, that's kind of the way I am with information, or the deepest parts of who I am. There are chambers, and I can let certain people into certain chambers, but I won't let them in any further. And so trust is a huge component of vulnerability, and it really helps for me to figure out what is appropriate vulnerability. And that appropriate vulnerability is really based on how much I'm pursuing trust with that person.
Yeah, I can see
it's
that.
not necessarily dependent on them. It's more dependent on my pursuit in really establishing that trust with them.
That makes perfect sense. No, totally. We had that deep conversation about that, and she's like, well, you share things on podcasts and when you're speaking on stages, whatever. And I'm like, I don't find anything that I share, to your point. I only share the things that I have that they can't be weaponized. If someone says, hey, you said this on stage, or I saw it online, I'd be like, yeah, so? Like, you're going to use it against me? That's the truth. The truth always wins.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
There's no fear in that. So I personally was using the word wrong, right? Because it sounded like a fun buzzword, but I think you're using it in the correct way, because you honestly understand what the fact is. Some of that might be able to be weaponized, and you're not comfortable with that. And that's perfectly fine. There's no right or wrong to it.
That's right.
It's an interesting focus. So let's shift to the book. So let's get into the heart of leadership. So I'd love for you to open up that conversation about what you feel is the heart of leadership, and how leaders can do a better job of implementing either structure or vision or whatever it might be to a company to get this thing launched.
Absolutely. So first, it starts with kind of the definition of leadership. And for me, again, growing up for most of my adult life, really that definition was to be strong, confident, an amazing problem solver, phenomenal in crisis, to be able to manage those things as they come in waves. I do have these superpowers that allow me to show up in that way. But really what I found is that just that led me to be, again, necessary, and required. And that's not a bad thing. It's just that now you're the glass ceiling of your organization. It can only grow as far as you can take it. But really wanting to be an entrepreneur and not an entrepreneur, I really wanted to be more than that. I really wanted to see this company rise above my station, rise above my, capability. So I just really define leadership now as loving and serving my people toward their fulfillment.
Love that.
And that shift was really to become employee centric, really allow them to show up in ways that maybe they are too afraid of, maybe they don't know that they can, but really allowing them to just show up in incredible ways that take the company far further than I could ever take it on my own.
I love that, dude. And you nailed it on the head. I remember, do you ever work with Tony Robbins, any of his stuff?
I have, yes.
Okay, so I came back from my first UPW and I was a changed man, let's put it that way, right? And I realized that I was so focused on, to your point earlier, focused on myself and not so much as the team and all that. And I said, something's got to change. The contribution side of my world was not existent when it came to like helping other groups or causes or anything like that. It was just about me making it. It was just about our team not burning out or running out of cash. And when I came back from that event and realized that we need to be giving well beyond, because the more we give, the more we have space to get, right? So we got to keep giving.
You got it.
I remember coming back and sitting down with Becky, my director of operations at the time. And she's, I said, look, what we need to do immediately is stipend a certain amount of money that we're going to give away. And I'm not going to tell you where we're going to give it. There are a couple of rules we'll put around it, meaning, hey, we want to make sure that every dollar goes to the person or the group. We want to make sure that it's local, supporting local. And they're the only two rules. Find a charity. Here's X amount of dollars. Find a charity and you give. Don't put my name on it. You give. And every year we're going to do this. We're going to continue to do this because the more we give, the more we can create. And that changed everything, dude. To your point, it changed it all when we started to focus on, all right, how do we help? And everyone has giving deep in their heart. And if the business can become a vehicle to help them get to their life's goals and missions and open up their heart in a bigger way, because maybe they couldn't do that on their own, but a business has more resources, so maybe it can, right? And having more of that, because at the end of the day, leadership to me is influence, right? And you're already doing that with your people. It's all about influence. It's not control. It's none of those things. It's influence. That's all you got is influence. And if you're not, if you think you want to be the one controlling every single piece and that's your idea, that's your criteria for success or leadership, then you're going to have a lot of pain because you can't control shit, right? At the end of the day, it's all an illusion. So if your focus is only on helping people, to your point, and empowering them and influencing them to become the best versions of themselves, how likely do you think it is that people are going to stick around for that mission, that vision?
That's right. Yeah. They won't, or they'll show up in ways that they feel like they have permission to show up.
Yeah.
And that was really a lesson I had to learn, was that, I know myself. I look at myself in the mirror every single day and I'm like, you're just a big goofball idiot. Like, you don't really know it. Every day is an adventure. You have no idea what you're doing. You just you get out there, you're willing to take shots, and some stuff happens and works and some doesn't. Then there are conversations I'm a part of where people are like, oh yeah, so-and-so, they're so intimidated by you. And I'm like, what? Literally, are you kidding me?
Yeah. So
there's this realization that there's a power dynamic in any relationship, especially at work. And so just realizing that power dynamic exists, whether I want to acknowledge it or not. I want to be one of the guys. I just want to be one of the team, one of the crew, but I'm not. I'm the owner. I'm the founder. And so recognizing that power exists, working every day not to abuse it has been one of the ways that we've been able to kind of create a lot of cohesion within the organizations that I own and operate. We talk about this idea of, as leaders, showing up every day to trade my power for my people's greatness.
I love that.
And that's a tough trade because that really takes a lot of humility. It takes a lot of trust, and it really takes just a lot of intentionality, because I just don't think about it in that regard most of the time. I think we're all in this together, and they're thinking, man, I hope he likes me. I hope he's happy with what I'm doing, and I hope I can get that promotion or that salary bump or whatever. They're in their own. They're the main character of their own movie.
Yep.
And so what we talk about is like this idea of showing up, this trading for your power for their greatness really is about really wanting every day to be the greatest protagonist of everybody else's life movie, instead of always being the main character, which we tend to do. If we're honest, we're typically the main character of the story of our own lives. But what if we were that person on screen that was like everybody cheered for that person because they were so supportive, so helpful, so endearing to the main character? What if that was how we led? And really, it's allowed our organizations to flourish because we do have psychological ownership amongst all of our employees toward where we're going and why.
I love that, dude. It's so important to have a clear vision of where you're going and then to empower people. And one of my favorite questions to ask when something comes up and, a team member is like, what should we do? I said, I don't know. What do you think? What would you do? Right? Let them own the outcome. Right. And that's right. Chris, are they always going to make the right decision? No. Do they learn faster when they make a decision that's wrong and then they'll do it again? Yes.
Yeah.
That's how huge. Give them the space. We're all human. I've made more mistakes than I can write a book in. Right.
Yep.
So if I'm a flawed human like the rest of them, what's to say that they aren't less flawed in some areas or maybe more? We won't know until we ask.
That's
so
right.
The question always is, well, what do you think we should do? As opposed to being the leader saying, this is what we got to do. Like the vision, the keeper of the responsibility of the vision is us. We have to make sure that the boat's going in the right direction, captain of the ship.
Yep.
But we don't have to sit there and dictate to all of our team members exactly what to do. So if you give them some space, you're going to be amazed by how much smarter they are than you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That takes a little bit of a drink of humility, though, a little slice of humble pie there.
It does. My goal is to always be the dumbest person in the room. Yeah. Surround myself with amazing people. And so I have three phrases that I talk about this in the book, 3 phrases that are now part of my discipline, daily discipline, to trade my power for their greatness, to really exercise vulnerability. One is, I'm sorry. It's such a powerful, useful thing to say and mean it. Genuinely be sorry for either situations you put them in, situations the clients have put us in, situation the economy has put us in, whatever it is, just own it. Just be like, hey man, I'm so sorry. Yeah. The next one is, I don't know. These are questions I get all the time where I'm like, I kind of do know, or at least I think I know. But instead of being the first person to speak, as Simon Sinek says, be the last to speak. And a great way to do that is just to be like, hey, I don't know.
What do you think?
What do you guys think? Yeah. How would you solve this? And then, like you said, you just guide them to land the plane in a way that makes the most sense to them, rather than them trying to execute your idea. They're really executing their idea, which is so much more powerful. And the last phrase that I try to use all the time is, I need your help. That's probably the toughest one for me, is to constantly be asking people for help, since I feel like my strength of character is to help other people. Yeah. And so when I have to say I need your help, it's like, oh gosh, I should know the answers to this. I should already be able to solve this problem. And so to ask for that help just feels a little painful. That does feel vulnerable. But it allows them to really thrive in their role. It
does, and it builds a bit of a vacuum, a space for them to grow, right? If we're taking up that space and we aren't willing to be vulnerable and say, you know what, I don't know, I please help me. They never get the opportunity to really audition or do their thing, right? And that's where vacations are greater. When you take some time out or piece out from the business, they have to fill the vacuum that you've created. And then you start to see this incredible growth in them. And there's going to be some pitfalls too. They got to learn just like anybody else. I've 2 young boys. I'm very blessed to have 2 young boys. And I've learned this mostly through raising kids, is, to give them space and teach them and give them the direction and let them figure it out. My youngest,
that's right.
My youngest, he's always been very, very much fond of fire. Right. So at 5 years old, he's super excited. He's out making little campfires and things outside, and he'd like to burn things, and we'd work on that and teach him what's good and what's bad and all that. And then he says, Papa, I want a blowtorch. I'm like, kid, you're 5 years old. I want a benzomatic blowtorch. He says to me, and I was like, At this point as a father, I could say, no, you're too young for that, or we could learn. So I said, sure, no problem. Got him benzomatic blowtorch, and I taught him exactly how it worked, what side not to grab, where not to start fires, all that stuff. And then I watched him grab the hot end. Then I watched him do things that weren't smart, and he learned. And now at the age of 13, he runs his Boy Scout troop. He is the most responsible kid I've ever seen with fire. Unbelievably responsible. He always has a garden hose next to it or a bucket of water, things that I never even think about. But he can think through it because he had the space to grow. I didn't sit there and hover. I'm not a hover parent. I don't build a rubber room for my kids to live in. They bounce off the ground, right? Like giving them that space is the most humane thing you can do for them to learn.
Yeah.
And now they're responsible with that, especially him with the fire, because I know that he knows what is good and bad with it. So when he goes off, I'm going to go start a fire. All right, cool. I have no doubt that he knows exactly what he's doing. But giving the space, I needed to create that vacuum for him to learn. And I just watched at a distance, a little further, a little further, a little further. And eventually he's on his own. That's what we need to do with our employees too and our team members. We can teach them, we can direct them, we can do all this wonderful stuff, but they need to have that vacuum. So if you're hovering and you're constantly there and you have this ego trip where you've got to be the one always there, you are always going to be needed and you will never be able to fire yourself. And you'll never get to a space where you can actually own a business. You're going to own your job for the rest of the life. So
that's right.
I'd love to talk, Chris, to you. If you have any starter steps for people listening out there, that might be exactly like I was only a few years ago when it came to this constantly being needed to be needed, right? I just wanted to be needed constantly. And to step away was an identity shift for me as well. And to your point earlier about rejection, I think that's one of our biggest fears, especially as men, is to be rejected. Because if we're rejected, then we're not going to be loved. And we all just want to be loved at the end of the day, right? So I have a deep-seated fear of rejection as well. So, or had, I should say, that's been, dissipating over time as I'm doing the deeper work. But the point is that I'd love for you to have maybe some steps out of the book or something that people that are starting out, how do they get started where they can start having a more, team-centric focus of the business and empower their teams and get the hell out of the way so they can finally start enjoying their life?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first things I would do is really kind of wrestle with the paradox that exists around necessity. So the way we talk about it is if you're necessary, that means that everyone else is unnecessary. And so just changing that paradigm in your own head, or at least start to, is really, really critical. One way that I do that is through the calendar. And so as you kind of take steps towards unnecessary, the way I would do that is really kind of look through your day. Again, looking through what meetings you're attending, study those agendas and study the people that are going to be attending those meetings. It's one of the things that's how I start every morning is to review what those meetings look like, what those agendas are, and who's going to be there. And then two things need to happen. One is it necessary for me to be at that meeting? That's a really important question to ask yourself. Do I need to be there? Or do I need to let these folks kind of figure it out and then present me with the results of that meeting?
Yeah.
That's a really great way to start stepping away. The other one is to just review the people and start going through your mind, like, what are their life circumstances right now? I just kind of say, meditate on your people and where they are, and just kind of think through from their perspective, how certain are they that they're doing a great job in your eyes? What are they walking into this meeting fearing, hoping for? And how can I show up in the most significant way possible for them in that particular meeting? So those would be two things I would just say, really good ways for you practically to take steps towards becoming unnecessary by building up, again, calling out the greatness in your people.
Yeah, I love that. And another great way I'll add to that is leave. You're going to find out what works and what doesn't work. Just take a week off with no connection and see what falls apart. And then you know where you need to focus and keep doing that over and over again. And you will start and it'll be a problem. You'll fix it. The other problems will show up and eventually you'll find that the problems are less and less and less and less and less. But it takes the guts to do it the first time. And
absolutely.
I know for many years, I know a lot of contractors listen to this podcast. And I know for many years, I always thought I need to be on the job site like almost every day because those guys are out there working, big mistakes. It's going to cost me money. So I had this constant anxiety that I needed to be on site, constantly be there, making sure everybody does everything right physically. And some of our projects could be 2 hours from our office, right? So that was an entire day in the car, and it was an entire day shot in the ass. And then I'm like, I can't get anything done. I wonder why. Because to your point, looking at the calendar, do I need to be doing this? Do I personally need to be there? And then obviously technology comes along and now I'm like, all right, if you have an issue, let's FaceTime, send me pictures, send me a video. Like I'm not leaving my office.
Yeah.
So we instituted what we call a zero drive time policy, which means that we only drive when we absolutely have to, and that technology will not do what we need it to do. so that we don't have all that wasted time, because all of that time, that windshield time it's a waste. It's things you aren't doing. You're not working on your business. You're not even working in it at that point. You're practically just driving, listening to the radio. And for sometimes, dude, there was many times that I was like, you know what? I can't wait to get out of the office. I just want to listen to the radio and drive to the job site. I need to break from this. I get that.
Yes, absolutely.
But, at the end of the day, the goal here is to own a business, not to own a job. And the first steps in that is to start working on trusting other people can do a job equal to or better than you, and then to empower them.
That's
and
right.
I know we don't sign up as business owners to become, cheerleaders for people. We just sign up as business owners to make more money than we could make working for somebody and make our own rules, right? That's really the goal of it all.
Yeah.
But along the way, we realize that that's not really what we're doing. Really, at the end of the day, we become coaches for people. And then they don't show up. They do show up. They've got life problems. They got all that happens. And all of a sudden, we're not really set up for that yet, because we just want to own a business and make more money. And eventually you realize, either if you don't realize this, you're out of business eventually or by yourself. And when you do realize what Chris is talking about, and you start saying, wait a minute, what if I just learn how to help people become better versions of themselves through the business? That's a different identity though, right? I'm not a business owner anymore. Now I'm a coach and I'm a helper and I'm a team member, and I'm like, all that, you become one of them as opposed to being better than them. So I love the way that you're unpacking that. And so the book looks like it comes out in October. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And where can people find the book?
They can connect to us through dcxcommunity.com and then also chrismuroff.com.
Got it. Okay. And the name of that book again is?
Well, ironically, we're actually changing the name of the book. It's actually going to be called The Empathy Revolution.
Nice. I love that. I liked it even better than the first one. So take me a little bit into empathy for listeners out there. This is something as a male that took me a long time. Women get this right away. Us guys, we're just very much practical thinkers, get it done. And empathy is foreign to us. So take me into empathy a little bit here as we wrap up.
There's this concept around emotion. And again, for me, emotion is just, again, personally, it felt like a sign of weakness to be stuck in any kind of emotion. And so I would want to just figure out a way not to feel that thing, whatever it was. I really operated in happy, sad, mad. And even that, I didn't want to. It's like, let me just get to a neutral state.
Yeah.
So first, really empathy is understanding that emotions are good. Like those are good things. That's how we cope with the world is through emotion, and really talking through those emotions, kind of bringing things out into the open, or how we're able to heal, how we're able to move on truly from these emotions. And so empathy, all it really is if somebody brings to you something that's sad to them, and they're like, hey, I'm feeling very sad about it, is for you to find remember a time in your life where you felt sad, and enter into sadness with them. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to solve the problem. Don't try to explain to them why they don't need to feel sad or afraid or any other emotion, but simply just be sad with them. And in that, there's this thing that happens psychologically. So when we feel high emotion, we move to the lizard part of our brain. We go to the fight or flight. And so when you're in that thinking, you really can't really use logic. So what happens is we're kind of in that state of like instinct. And what you need to do is to kind of enter into that state with somebody in order for them to not feel like they're alone. Once they don't feel like they're alone emotionally, they'll actually naturally come out of that state psychologically. And once they're out of that state, then they're going to go to you and say, okay, well, now what do I do with this situation?
I love it.
And now you can empower them to go forward. But empathy is such a powerful tool because it requires a lot of patience, a lot of love, a lot of sacrifice. At least for my part, it does, because it doesn't come naturally. I want to solve problems quickly. But what it does is it allows them to actually listen or hear you when you're able to empower them beyond that circumstance.
I love how you said that. It's so true. If a problem comes up and you look at the person and be like, hey, here's how you solve it. And you've never even acknowledged their emotion, especially a female, doesn't have to be, but feminine energy, right? And you just say, here's how you solve it. They don't feel heard or understood. So if you start off simply with an empathetic, entry by saying, hey, I totally understand how you can feel this way. This must suck. I've been there before, or I hope I never have to get there. But let's think about how we can solve this problem now. So you see how you kind of not leveled down, I'm sorry, but sadness is a lower vibrational emotion. And so, you kind of level down to where they are. You're having a conversation one-on-one. You're not dictating at them. You're in the game with them.
That's right.
So important. Even clients, you have clients or customers that are like I've had that before where, been doing this over 25 years now. Some clients just aren't happy at times, right? It happens. So what are you going to do?
Right.
First of all, I always say, give them a half hour to simmer down, because they're only going to hit you with all the emotions, and there's no logic in those. So give them some time to simmer, and then call them and say, hey, I totally understand what's going on, or I'm here to listen. Please let me know. Tell me your story. What's going on? And let them completely divulge everything from their point of view. That gives you a better idea of what angle, and you get into their world. You get an idea. That's empathy in the beginning. It's so important, as opposed to getting on the call and being like, you're an asshole. I'm owed this. You're wrong. That doesn't work. Just stop and say,
no.
Tell me what's going on. Let them talk first.
That's right.
Because they're going to solve most of your problems with them talking. Just say, hey,
exactly.
Sorry you're going through this. Fill me in. What's going on? And let them and they're going to dump all kinds of nastiness on it. It's okay. Because they, just like all storms run out of rain, they will run out of words, and eventually they will feel better. And then you can come to the other side of that. But you landed where they are, not trying to push back against and saying their emotions, to your point, that their emotions are not valid or not understood or not felt. It's important to meet them where they are.
It's so true. It really de-escalates most situations way faster than logic will. It's really kind of entering into that emotion with them.
Yeah.
And so for me, because I tried to bury or really not have any emotions most of my life, it took a recataloging of events in my life. And so to be able to go back and find, I was so emotionally unintelligent. I didn't even know what a lot of the words meant. Emotional words, again, happy, sad, mad were really my only frame of reference.
Yeah.
But my wife used a lot more words than I do as it relates to emotion. So I had to go back and catalog my life, which is a lot of work, a lot of introspection. It's something I still have a long way to go, but there are now moments I can remember as a child or as a young adult where that emotion was present. And so it's not just a matter of remembering it. Now I've got to actually bring it back up and enter into that emotion so that I can feel what they're feeling.
Yeah.
Instead of feeling bad for what they're feeling, which is more sympathy, I want to enter into the actual emotion that they're feeling. And that's what the empathy is, and the power of empathy. Because what it does is it destroys loneliness and isolation.
Absolutely.
And that's the first step. There is strength in numbers. And so once you're able to kind of enter into that with them, it gives them a place to start from to solve some of these issues or these problems.
Yeah, a lot of times those problems seem to the person that has them as unsolvable, right? There's these big unsolvable problems they don't know. Say you're doing a project or you're working with a client doing anything, and they don't know your world like you do, and you see 15 ways out of it. And they don't. All they see is a massive problem that there's no way out of it. It's unsolvable. So they come at you with the fury and the fervor of, oh my God, I'm going to get screwed here. And you're like, dude, there's 14 ways we can get out of this thing, but they don't know that. But if you say that to them and they feel like you haven't taken that emotion in with them, say, hey, I totally understand. It's empathy first, always. Hey, I totally understand. Let's talk through this. We'll figure out a way out. Okay. There's always a way out. Yeah. It puts them at ease. Like you're listening and your tonalities come down. We do a lot of sales training. So tonalities come down to where they are. You don't try to, you try to match, of course, but the goal is to match and bring them down to a level that's manageable, right? And not trying to manipulate, but simply trying to understand and listen with your ears, not just hear, but listen what they're saying. So important.
Yeah, it's so powerful.
Yeah. Well, dude, I could talk to you all day about this type of subject and this content. So guys, if you want to get the book, it's out there. Again, one more time, the new name of it and where they can get it.
The Empathy Revolution, dcxcommunity.com. That'll be released in October. Also, we have our conference coming up in October. We have Tim Tebow speaking, Pat Lencioni will be there, John Acuff, Dr. John Deloney, and Vanessa Van Edwards, an all-star lineup. And so for your listeners, if they want to attend that or even really be able to watch the live stream, they can use a promo code called DCX Unity. That's DCX Unity. We'll give them a 15% discount on that live stream.
Awesome. And where can they find that? Is that on your website for that?
That's
event?
Also dcxcommunity.com.
Awesome.
Yes.
That sounds like quite the lineup, dude. I'm definitely going to check that out. I love those guys.
Yeah. Come join us live in Austin. It'll be a great event.
Awesome. I appreciate it, sir. So if anybody wants to reach out to you directly, is there an easy way for them? Instagram or Facebook or anything like that?
Yeah, chrismoroff.com is the best way. And from there, all the different social media, they can find me from that website.
Got it. So appreciate you coming on, Chris, and guys out there and girls out there listening. It's about empowering your team. There is so much gold that you have in mind within your team. The secret of all of this is get the hell out of the way. Let them come in. Let them come in and show their God-given gifts, and let them just explode within that space. And you know what? You might find people are in the right spot. Maybe they're not. Maybe they need a little shift to the left. And the next thing you know, you'll have a much better, more well-oiled machine. And everyone's going to be then pulling a lot harder and driving toward that clearer mission as you start to develop it over time. So Chris, thank you for coming on. And for everyone else, see you next week.